What's going on, everyone? Let me know that you're coming on. I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about some things that have not really disturbed me, but I just believe that need to be addressed within the musician community as it relates to our livelihood and the epidemic that we see happening right now across the globe. I think it's important that we look at things in a proper perspective. And we know now that a lot of people are fearful and or concerned about what's going on in the world. And so I want to kind of address some things and help some people out. Prayerfully, you guys will be able to see my heart and what I'm sharing and take something from it, to apply. I'm 43 years old now. I've been in this thing a long, 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 long time. Started playing the drums when I was 2 years old, and literally was playing by the age of about 5 in church services. So literally, I've been in music pretty much all of my life. And so I've experienced the good and the bad and the ugly, and which I'm sure a lot of us have as it relates to churches. And I understand this is a diverse group. So we not only have church musicians, but we also have, secular musicians. And I just use that term just for the sake of, categorizing the difference between the two and as it relates to what I'm going to talk about today. But this applies to all musicians, to be honest with you. It applies to all musicians. So if you guys come on in and listen, do me a favor, click that like and love button. Share this broadcast out. I'm not sure if we'll be able to, because it's a private group, I'm not sure if it would actually go out to all of your other musician friends or what have you. But I do want to, what I'll do is I'll upload this video again so we can make it public as well. But yeah, you guys come on and let's really talk about this and have this conversation. Let me check the actual group to make sure everything is coming in properly. But yeah, as I was preparing resources, anybody that knows me, first of all, my name is Jermaine Freeman, Pastor Jermaine, Pastor J, you can call me. My wife and I were actually launching Pneuma Life Church this year, September of this year, God willing. You know how things are up in the air right now. We just, matter of fact, received an email from the school system letting us know, of course we knew this, but letting us know that we wouldn't be able to use the facility till further notice. And so it's a chaotic time for everybody in the body of Christ, in the world in general. And so it's an unprecedented territory that we're walking through. Unprecedented events. I was telling my wife and children, I said, you know what? There's 3 major events that have happened in my lifetime that I will never forget. I will never forget. That first one was 9/11. The second one was us getting the first black president with President Obama. And the third one will be this coronavirus pandemic. It's amazing that you can always recall where you're at the very moment when major things like this happen. And we have to be prepared for these things, right? This is really Bible prophecy coming to pass, right? Whether you believe in the Bible or not, I'm telling you, it's Bible prophecy coming to pass. And so we're not alarmed by these things, or surprised, I should say. But many times, because we're living our lives, day to day, and we just go on, doing the hustle and the bustle, we don't realize we're actually living out what the Bible is telling us, or has foretold to us as it relates to what's happening in the world now. We know about plagues and pestilences that the Book of Revelation talks about that would be present, and not being able to find cures for diseases or what have you. And we understand as the body of believers that this is the time where we have to make sure that our faith is still intact and still in order, and we show strength, not only just strength, but strength in numbers. But even in the musician community, as it relates to the faith-based community, I'm real concerned about the younger generation coming up. And I believe that God has given me a mandate, even as a pastor, as a current and musician. I always say, once a musician, always a musician. So even if I pastor, if God allows me to pastor the next 30 or 40 years, I'm still going to be a musician at heart. That's what I love. It's a passion of mine. Of course, now preaching and teaching the Word of God is my very number one passion. I love that. But music is something that really soothes me. Music is something that you can always turn to in times like these, right? And so I'm really, really excited about the opportunity that's present now as it relates to this whole coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic that we're actually experiencing now. What's going on, Chris, man? Thank you for joining, man. And so, here's where I want to talk about and really focus on. To me, I think that we have to always be great stewards over what we have. Have we always been that way? Absolutely not. I can attest and I can be transparent and say I haven't always been a great steward of what God gave me, over my money. When I look back over my life for 43 years, my young years, I realized I threw a lot of money away. And so I try to pass on wisdom and tell the younger generation, listen, don't throw your money away on a lot of this stuff. Don't go out there and spend $200 or $300 on a pair of Jordans or a pair of sneakers. Take that same $200 or $300 and invest it into a mutual fund, invest it into stocks, learn a skill set and all that. And so, I think there's a misconception amongst the younger generation that the church is supposed to supply all their needs. And let's be honest, that's just not true. That's just not realistic. Should the church compensate us for our time, for our skills, for what we bring to the table? Absolutely. Anybody that knows me knows I've always been an advocate for musicians and minstrels that are faithful, that are skilled, that love the Lord, that participate, that do what they're called to do, they're professional and all that. Yes, they should be paid, and so we've got to get to a point where we understand that that's like null and void, right? We should be compensated. The Word of God tells us, a workman is worthy of his hire. So, we're putting time in that the average lay member is not putting in. The conversation came up one time when I had this on my timeline. I was talking about musicians getting paid. And I don't know if y'all recall the actual video that came out with the pastor talking about musicians should be paid and why they should be paid. And we having this conversation, and one of the young ladies said, well, if the musicians should be paid, then the ushers should be paid, the deacons and all this. And I said, well, I disagree with that. And the reason for that is because they don't have the same time commitment as musicians have, right? As singers have. And watch this. Most singers don't have the same time commitment as musicians. It takes years and years of practice. I like to say perfect practice, right? Because, the saying is practice makes perfect. And that's not true. My high school basketball coach always taught us, and I remember it to this day, and I've always implemented it, is practice can't be perfect if what you're practicing is wrong, right? It can't be perfect. And so perfect practice makes perfect. And so when we're perfecting our gifts, when we're listening to different music, we're spending our own money, right? To back in the day, we were buying tapes, we were buying CDs, we were, doing all of this, we, buying additional music and what have you. Now we have streaming services, so we don't have to spend as much money. But over the course of the years, we've done a lot of things to improve our actual skill sets. And the average person in the church, or the average position, or whatever the case may be, they don't do that. They don't do that. I would even go out and venture to say that the average praise and worship leader from a perspective, let's be real. The average praise and worship leader, or the average, let's just say the average choir member. The average choir member does not go home and rehearse the actual music like they should, the actual material like they should. If they did, we wouldn't have issues with choir members coming back to rehearsal the following week and we having to go back over songs, teaching them, reteaching them, right? It shows that they're not doing what they should be doing at home. They're not doing the same thing that we do. And so it really depends. You know, when you look at an usher versus a musician, you can't compare the two. The usher is basically, don't get me wrong, their job is vitally important. Their job is vitally important to the church. But from a work perspective, which most pastors try to really equal out the equation with, you know, okay, so this is how many hours you're at church. You know, this is what we're going to compensate you. You can't do that. And I'm going off a little bit to a whole different area. You can't do that because you can't compensate me for the outside hours. How are you going to compensate me for the hours that I'm just at church when I put so much more time into this outside of church? Granted, as you get older, you learn, and you've perfected your gift. It comes a whole lot easier, right? It becomes second nature. You know, I was telling somebody, you know, I can listen to a song on the way to a rehearsal now, and I already know the chorus, even though that's not what I'm doing. What I was making a point was that even if I got a last minute call and somebody said, I need you to listen to this song for rehearsal, I already know enough theory. I've heard it over and over again. I've had acquired pitch. And so I know, okay, this is pretty much what key they're in. So when I get there, I pretty much already have the foundation of the actual song, right? I kind of already know how the song is going or what have you. And that comes over time. That comes over years of experience, years of practice, years of listening to different genres of music and practicing different genres of music and playing different genres of music. And so because of that, I have now obtained a certain level, right? But that does not mean that you don't compensate me for the level that I've obtained. It's like in the business world. I remember I made this point to a pastor I was having a conversation with, and I was saying, okay, you're equating what I make based on, what you perceive in your mind. I said, well, how much more greater is the work of God than the work of IBM or the work of any of these other corporations that pay you six figures a year, right? How much more is a soul that I help bring into this church because of the gift that God has given me? How much more valuable is that than a job that pays you to create a computer program? Right? If we want to be real about it, let's be real about it. And so you can't equate, you can't say, okay, it's business. Business is business. But then you start to equate differently when it comes to the church. You can't do that. You can't flip the script like that, because when you become business with me, now I have to become business with you. And so it's a total different paradigm shift. But in saying that, here's what I want to bring about. Even in saying that and understanding that the point is, I believe that musicians should be paid. However, this is the issue I feel that's happening across the globe with, I can't even say across the globe. I'm going to just speak for the United States of America and what I've experienced from my local core here in North Carolina, whether it's the Triangle where I'm from, Raleigh-Durham area, whether it's Triad where I'm at now, whether it's been Charlotte. I know musicians all over the country, and we have the same issue going on, and that's that we put ourselves in a position where if a church cancels a service, we have an issue. And the issue is now we're trying to scramble to find makeup services because we don't want to miss out on the paycheck. And I learned a long time ago, and granted, this is something that I believe is a struggle for all musicians at one point in their lives, right? You don't want to ever put all your eggs in one basket. And I know we've heard that. And I'm going to look at the comments as well and see what we got going on over here. You never put all of your eggs in one basket. It was never designed in the modern day church. Listen to what I'm saying. In the modern day church, the church, it was never designed for the church to take care of you. Let me say that again. It was never designed for the church to take care of you. There are several scriptures in the Bible, and I'm going to give you some, I'm going to lay something out, that show that a man that does not work, even outside of your church check or what have you, if you don't work, you don't eat. And I think we've got to understand, we got to get out of the mentality that all of our help, quote unquote, comes from the church. Right? The Lord has given us the keys to the kingdom. He's given us access. Keys equals access. And so you're able to go into doors and unlock doors. But if you're sitting idle and you're not building upon what God has given you, then when moments like this come, we have issues. I got to a place one time and granted, I've always been the type that, wanted to do additional things. I've always had an entrepreneurial type of mind. And so I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, right? But I was at a point where I was depending too much on the church. And I quickly realized that, wait a minute, hold on, Jermaine. You can't do that, right? Because one, I went from being single to being married and then to having a family. And so I got to a point where I realized, you know what? Let me just put it to you this way. And I'm speaking as a musician and from a pastoral standpoint now. I understand both sides. But here's what I do know. No matter what happens, that church that pastor has started or has been hired in, they're going to make sure that pastor is taken care of. That's just the unadulterated truth. They're going to make sure that pastor is taken care of. And I said this to my former pastor one time. I said, look, they're going to make sure you fine. They're going to make sure. I'm the one, I have to be concerned about myself, right? Because if you are cutting my check or if we don't get a check or what have you, I've got to look out for me. And so I got to a point, I said, God, I need for you to work it out. God had given me all of these different skill sets and what have you. Many of you guys know that I do a whole facet of things that God has allowed me to really perfect and really become great at. Thank God it's all God. I mean, especially I've never been trained on anything. I've always had a learning mind. And so I always made sure, okay, I want to learn along the way. And God has always put me in a position where I could never be comfortable, right? I could never be comfortable. It's like, okay, if I don't do this and that, then I won't be able to feed my family. Or if I don't do this and that, then I may not, eat tomorrow or what have you. Thank God that's never happened. God has always provided. However, I wanted to make sure that I had a plan in place to move forward. Okay. And so you've got to understand that, first of all, your first priority has to be to you and your family. Period. It has to be to you and your family. The order that we must understand is God first, family second, and then the church. Even in me planting a ministry this year, when I had the conversation with my wife about the pastoral call and what God was calling me to, I told her then, I said, if I ever feel like the church is coming before my family, or I feel like my family is struggling, or I feel like our marriage is breaking down because I'm spending so much time building this ministry and all that, I told her, I'll give it all up. I'll find another pastor to take over Newman Life Church. Why? because I understand God's order. I understand God's order. And so it is about you. It's about God first. It's about you and your family second. And then the church comes. Many times we had that order reversed, where we put the church before us, right? And we cannot do that. The church came after the family. Understand that. The church came after the family. The first institution God ever established was the family. And so we've got to understand that, listen, we've got to do our due diligence and making sure that our families are taken care of. Now, in saying that, I want to really stress this point. This is now a time where you can really refocus and look at your life. And I'm talking about from the youngest musician on up to some that are older than I am and haven't really thought about this. This is a time now where you can really look at what's going on in your life and look at your skill set, look at the things that you're able to do and say, okay, God, how can I build a legacy, build an empire outside of what I'm doing now? You want to have at least 6 to 7 streams of income. Okay, so of course one of those streams could be your main income from your main job or what have you. You want to get out and work a job. Let me just stop. Let me park. Let me put a quarter in the meter right there. Let me just stop there for a minute. Listen, if you're not at a mega church or at a church that has a huge membership and is able to bring you on full time, then you should not be just chilling at the house like it's all good. Get out and get you a job. Get you a job. Proverbs, let me see which one it is. It talks about idleness. And it was talking about if you are idle, if you're sleeping, if you're slumbering, and you're not doing work, guess what? Poverty is your end. Poverty is your end. And so you've got to say, this is an idle time for a lot of people in America. They're not able to go to work. Churches are shut down. Prime time for musicians to say, look, okay, what else can I do outside of that? Whether it's investing, right? Whether it's learning how to trade Forex market. The Forex market is real huge because guess what? When the stock market goes down, Forex is still booming because you're able to trade Forex going up the market or down the market, the currencies of all of these different countries. Okay, so even when one currency is weak, there's always another currency that's strong. And so you're able to make a profit either way. But Forex trading, do some other things. Everybody has a skill set. Everybody has a story. Learn how to package your story. Learn how to package your skill set and present that to the world. Every single one of you guys has something that you can offer the world. And watch this. When you don't use the gifts that God has given you, when you don't use the things that He's given you, now you are doing God a disservice. You're doing yourself a disservice. But guess what? You're doing your brothers and sisters a disservice as well. Because you have something inside of you that they need. You have something inside of you that's designed to change the world. And so you've got to make sure that you're giving it to them. Your message can literally become your business, right? The things that you do. Learn to write a book. Learn to create a course. And you don't have to be an expert, right? Here's the thing. I learned this a long time ago in one of my mentors in the internet marketing world. It's really, all you have to know is 1% more than the next person. So you mean to tell me out of 7 billion people in the world, you can't find, let's say, 1,000 people that want to hear what you have to say? Of course you can. You just have to put the work in. Watch this. Do the hard work one time and get paid the rest of your life on it. Create a course. You can take every day. Now you have time, right? So let's say you look at your day and say, okay, I'm going to start my morning with prayer. I'm going to start my morning with meditation, Bible study. Okay, and then after that, block off your day. What are the things that matter most? right? What are those income generating revenue opportunities that you have? Okay, what are the things that will generate revenue for you that you can do? Is it music lessons? Right? That's an easy one that every musician that's accomplished and can teach others. That's an easy one you can do outside of the church to make you a whole lot of money. Do virtual piano lessons. Do virtual drum lessons. You know what I mean? Do if you're a vocalist, do vocal training virtually. Do a mini course on virtual training, on vocal training, and then sell that course for $37. And then upsell them to a longer program or upsell them to one-on-one coaching. Listen, guys, there's so many ways that you can make money out here. And I'm trying to help these young guys because guess what? I didn't get it until I was so much older. I didn't get it till I was about 30 on up, right? I didn't have anybody to do what I'm doing for you guys. I didn't have anybody. I had people that encouraged me along the way, but I didn't have anybody to sit me down and say, you know what? This is the way that you want to do it. This is what you need to look forward to. Even as a musician, these are the things you have to watch out for. If I had that, even when I first became a minister of music, and then even in my second minister of music job, which I wound up being in almost 18 years with Victorious Praise, if I had known early on what I know now, things would be so much different. It would be we would be so much further along. But because I sacrificed so much, and don't get me wrong, I know God is going to reward us for that sacrifice, but I sacrificed things that I didn't really have to sacrifice. And I was loyal in situations where that loyalty never came back to me. Okay? And so we've got to make sure that we don't get caught, for sake of a better phrase, we don't get caught with our pants down, right? We are proactive in what we're doing or what have you. Let me look at some of these comments or what have you. Depending on the church. Exactly, Dennis Spivey. That's right. Depending on the church, you may have to do multiple rehearsals per week, but they never take into account the hours of rehearsal it takes to prepare for rehearsal with the choirs and band. Absolutely. And that's the key. That's what people don't understand, man, is that it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time that we have to put into this thing, man. We don't just show up on Sunday mornings and sound amazing. It just does not happen without us putting in time. And not just time from a perspective of practice, but time with God. Those that are true minstrels, we spend time in our prayer lives. We spend time in seeking God. We spend time in prophetic worship, right? Just sitting down at our instruments. I know me as a pianist for years, I used to sit down at my instrument and just play worship. And a lot of songs came out of that, right? Many times, a lot of songs come out of the prophetic worship or what have you. And so that when they understand that, it takes the relationship between a minister of music and the pastor to a whole nother level. When they respect your time and they understand, and guess what, guys? Many times you have to educate them. They just don't know. I've realized that now. In my experience, I realized they just do not know. And so you have to educate them. Educate your pastor. Don't be afraid to schedule a meeting with your pastor. Go out to lunch or whatever and say, well, Pastor, this is what you're requiring of us. But let me just kind of show you really what's required of us to accomplish what we do in the music ministry. Everybody is not as privileged as I was because my pastor was a former minister of music. And one of the best things I feel like, about situations like that is they already know, right? Most of the time, if they've been a minister of music, they already know what we kind of deal with. And so they're a lot more understanding in certain areas. Don't get me wrong now. In certain areas. And again, I get it. As a pastor, you have so much that you are over that a lot of times we as minstrels and we as musicians or lay members, we never really understand the totality of what our pastors go through. I was able to experience the inner workings of, my previous church, because we were there from the very, very beginning. We were actually planners with my former pastor. And so we saw the ups and the downs. We saw it all. I mean, we were there. We were in the groundwork, helping build that ministry in the trenches. And so we saw it. And so a lot of times we don't understand what the pastor is really going through. We just see it from our lens. And so I've learned years ago to understand, both sides of the spectrum. But again, it's really about us coming together to really, really work together to build that ministry, to build that kingdom, build the kingdom of God or what have you. See, preach, bro. We did for years. Absolutely, Joe. Joe already know. Joe already know. We gotta have multiple streams, man. And so that's what I wanted to come on today. Listen, you got to make sure that during times like these, you're able to stay afloat. Create an emergency fund, right? Have 1,000 to 3,000, or to, if you have debt. They always say you want to have at least $1,000 in there. If you have no debt, then you want to have 2 to 3 months of expenses put away in your emergency fund. Okay, I'm currently and watch this. This is something that, and I believe, and I'm going to implore a lot of pastors to do as well. Is something that they've never done, or at least I believe in the African American church. Let me say that they hardly really think about this. And that is going ahead and building these types of things into your yearly annual budget. Going ahead and building into your budget an emergency fund for the church. So that way the employees of the church, or those you have to pay, they won't suffer during these times. Right? You'll still be able to get your paycheck. And that's what my plan is at Pneuma Life. We're going to have an emergency fund that we pay, whether it's 10, 15, or 20% into every single Sunday. We're giving 10% to missions in our missions department, and, churches. Another 10% we're saving. And then another 10% we want to put into this emergency fund, right? Outside of our salaries and all that, because I want to be able to say that the people that have served me faithfully for years, they don't have to worry about where the next meal is going to come from. If we're in an economic downturn, or we're in a position like we are now where churches can't meet because it's mandated. Not that we don't want to. We all love church. I love church. I'm a very interactive person. I'm a people person. And so I love being relational and that in-person interaction, that engagement. And so but we got to understand there may be times. In fact, there will be times, even coming up, where the Bible tells us that we will be persecuted, right? We will be persecuted for preaching the gospel. We even see it now across the world where individuals are persecuted. They're getting their fingers cut off. They're getting their heads cut off. I often say that we in America do not know what it is to really suffer for Christ. We have not gotten to that point yet here in America. And so we have so much to thank God for. We have so much to be thankful for, because God has given us the liberty and the freedoms to really worship him as we desire. But there will be a time where a mandate like this will become executive order, right? So what are you going to do then? I'm reminded even of those that were in slavery, and how they wanted to worship, but they couldn't, because if they worshiped, then the master would beat them, or God forbid, kill them. And so even a lot of our ancestors had to learn how to worship God and have church services privately, in their huts and things of that nature. And I thought yesterday, I said, how soon we forget, right? How soon we forget, one, that the modern day church is not built off of a building. We are the church. We are the church. We should be carriers of God. We should be the carriers of his word. And many times we forget that we should be able to have church no matter where we at. No matter what the building is, we should be carrying the Spirit of God. So when we get there, we know the presence of God is already there. I'm not here to preach, but I'm just letting you know that's where we have to get back to. We have to get back to understanding the movement of God and building the kingdom. We got to get out of this religiosity and get back to kingdom-minded individuals and really building the kingdom forward. Yes, sir. Let me see what these last comments are. Yeah, fellas. I implore you. I implore you to really add those streams of income. And I have some scriptures I'm going to post that really talks about this. I think one of the things, a lot of times, again, we think that we're not supposed to work outside of the church or outside of what we're getting, and that's just not the case. That's just not the case, and we can't compare contextually. We can't compare, the Levites of old to the Levites of now, right? Of the modern day church, this modern day society, because things have changed, have transformed so much. I had a gentleman that tried to come at me yesterday on one of my posts because I was sharing resources on how to continue to be relational and engaging online. And he tried to come at me talking about, did Jesus wait for a telephone? Did Jesus wait to be telegraphed here? Did Jesus use a cell phone and all of this? And I'm like, man, you're so non-contextual. Do you not believe that Jesus would use the internet to expand the gospel, to do more if he had it? You don't believe that Jesus would have used a car to travel if he had a car? You don't believe he would have an airplane? You know what I'm saying? And then I told him, I said, well, think about this. If that's the case, in the context of what you're saying, then we should throw all of our leather-bound Bibles away, right? Let's go back to reading scrolls and reading chiseled tablets or what have you. How about this? Let's throw away electricity. Let's go back to living in the woods in a hut and creating our own clothes out of leaves. Right? We've got to understand that God has blessed and allowed us to be innovative. And many times that innovation, when we use it for the purpose of building God's kingdom, we're using it for good. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's amazing to me that another Christian at that, would see an issue with that. We're not saying don't go to church, that we don't want to worship in person. We're saying now we're put in a predicament where we can't. And so what is the alternate or the alternative to that? Sit at home, and our churches now become disjointed because we're not able to engage with each other. And they're struggling, they're going through things, but we're not able to pray with them or whatever the case may be. Why not bring everybody together online and do what we can to keep that engagement, keep that participation, and keep that relationship going, even in a different environment than what we're used to or what have you. And so, it's just mind-boggling a lot of times how we think because of what we've been used to doing, the traditional way of doing things. And, I had somebody say something about that. And I said, well, in case you didn't know, what we're doing right now is not traditional. I mean, that it's nothing common about this pandemic. This is the first time I've ever been a part of a pandemic. I've been part of epidemics, right? But the pandemic where the whole entire world is literally shutting down. This is the first time in my lifetime. I've never experienced anything like this. And so we can't really say or look back to a previous moment and say, okay, this is what we apply, because we're in unprecedented territory. And so we have to, live our lives accordingly and do what we can to adjust and move forward in that or what have you. Okay, guys? So listen, I'm going to go back and look at the comments, but overall, I know I've been on here about 30 minutes, I believe. Here's what I want to say, 40 minutes. Here's what I want to say, is that I believe it's very, very important that we as musicians, whether secular, whether you play in a church or not, that we have other streams of income, that we not only focus on that particular gig or that particular church that we're playing for, but that we look at other ways that we can build income. We can look at other ways that we can build our empires and build a legacy and leave an inheritance for our children's children. I believe that's very important and very key in times like these. And so, I believe this is a huge opportunity for you guys. I believe that this is a huge opportunity for you to sit down, take out a sheet of paper, and really brainstorm ideas. What are the things that you love doing that you wouldn't get paid to do? What are those things? What are the things that come natural to you? Right? What are the things that you're passionate about? Now, sometimes your passion won't be the thing that'll make you money. So you have to keep that in perspective as well. That's a whole nother live there. But again, I just wanted to come and encourage you guys, excuse me, and let you know that, listen, we're going to get through this. And I just have the faith to believe. I know in Luke, when Luke 22, when Jesus was talking to Peter, and he said, I prayed for you that your faith fail you not. And that's been my prayer for the entire body of believers, the whole entire kingdom, is that our faith fail us not during this time. I made a post yesterday. I said, how can pastors, be upset with others that say, okay, we're going to close our doors and tell them that they don't have faith, right? So you're telling me that you have faith to believe that God is bigger than the coronavirus, but you don't have the faith to believe that that same big God can carry you through any financial situations you may have with your church. It doesn't make sense. How does that work? As a pastor, how does that work? No, we have to have faith and be strong in our faith no matter what comes our way. We have to be strong in our beliefs and knowing that ultimately God has it all in control. Ultimately, God has it all in control. And those that are holy and righteous and live according to his word, he is going to look out for. He's going to make sure that we find favor. And we've got to be ready as the body of Christ. We've got to be ready as the body of believers for these individuals. Just like after 9/11. I was telling my wife earlier. Just after 9/11, where the churches flooded after 9/11. They were flooded. And so we've got to be ready, because I guarantee you, the Sunday after they release these mandates on churches are going to be jammed packed. No matter what size your church is, it's going to be jam packed, because people are going to come looking for answers and looking for God, and we got to be ready to give them that. Okay, I love you guys. I hope I shared something that really encouraged you and really implored you to really look at other things, other options for you and your family. The Bible talks about a man or anybody that doesn't work and does not take care of their family is worse than an infidel, right? Worse than an unbeliever. You're worse than that. Even as a Christian, if you don't take care of your family, if you don't find ways to increase your income and revenue, and really, it boils down to this. And I always tell people, I don't want to become a millionaire just to have all these fancy things and all that. I want to become a millionaire to do more kingdom undergirding, right? I want to be able to undergird ministry and really move forward the kingdom of God with the means I have. Yeah, I don't think that there needs to be other millionaires or billionaires that are Christians that can get into these other places that we can't get into as just thousandaires or 100,000aires. Think about it. I mean, those same golf courses that may cost you $1,000 a round to play on, right? They need people. We need to get access to these individuals because they need God. How many of you know that President Trump needs God, right? All of these other politicians, they need God. All these other celebrities need God. And we have to be in a position and have access to give God to them. And so, it's all for the kingdom. And, my prayer today is that you guys really move forward and that you be prosperous in everything that God has desired for you to do. I'm excited about what God is doing, even for the musicians, the Triangle Musicians Lounge. I know Roger's got some things coming up, and we're going to do some things. I've been so tired, or bogged down, I should say, with really building my team and the church and everything. And so you guys be in prayer for the kingdom of God, and that we move forward and advance in everything that we're doing, in every area of our lives. Is key to do that. I love you guys, and I will talk with you all later. Peace.